Hello everybody, and good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. My name is ProfesorRich, and we're here to learn some English. Today we are talking about the topic of ethics. Ethics. Ethics is a Greek word, and we'll look at the phonemics here for ethics. You can see there, pretty simple. Ethics. I like this eth. You don't get many English words with this, do you? This ethics. So ethics, Greek word, and that's the pronunciation. It's a noun. What does it mean? That's the question that we'll be asking today, and also we'll be talking a bit about the considerations of ethics. In other words, what things do we discuss and think about when we consider the topic of ethics? For those who don't know, I have a background in philosophy. So many years ago, actually 20 years ago, I studied a university degree in philosophy. So I have some position to talk about philosophical subjects such as ethics. And of course, I'm an English teacher. I've been an English teacher for 15 years, so I have something to say about teaching English on these topics as well. So, ethics, we will be talking about what is good. The question of ethics is what is good, what is bad, what is evil, what is virtuous. The consideration of ethics is indeed what is a good action? What is a good person? We're going to look at 3 moral frameworks. You may wonder, what exactly is the meaning of frameworks here? So, frameworks basically is a system or theory to help model or represent something. So when I say 3 moral frameworks, I'm basically saying 3 moral perspectives, 3 moral theories, or 3 moral models of the world. We're going to look at 3 moral frameworks, probably the 3 most common, or let's say most popular frameworks. We'll have some practice with moral situations. It's going to take a while for us to get to that point. That will be towards the end of the class, probably in about an hour or so. We'll have some practice with moral situations. Then we'll have some reflection on the class. Any good teacher knows that you need a bit of reflection at the end of a lesson, or at least, if not at the end of a lesson, then after the lesson, or the next day, or in the future, and so on. In school, reflection is often achieved by the use of homework, for example. Homework requires students to reflect on the learning that took place in the class, but we will be doing a little bit of reflection today at the end of this class, and then we'll talk about homework. That's right. If you're new to this channel, I do give homework once a week, and I ask you to send in audio recordings of your homework, and then we listen to other students, we talk about the English, and we discuss basically what everyone has to say. So you are welcome to participate in that activity. You simply need to complete the homework task at the end of the lesson. Join our Discord server. There is a link to do that below the video, and then you can send me the homework on our Discord server and we'll take a look at that. So once again, my name is ProfesorRich, also known as Teacher Rich, and today we're learning English and we're talking about ethics. And there's the pronunciation, as we've already looked at. So, as I said before, ethics is about the question, what is good? Now, that is not so easy to answer, the question of what is good. we consider these different areas. Virtue, helping others, or something else. So what do you think in the chat? Type your answers in the chat now. What do you think? What is good? We might also ask, what is virtue? So virtue is a type of behavior which is valued by society or by humanity. So we consider types of behavior or virtues, and those types of behavior, we say these types of behavior are valued by society. That's what we call virtues. So, for example, honesty, like telling the truth. You might consider that to be a virtue. Therefore, you're saying that honesty or telling the truth is a beneficial category of behaviors for society or for humanity. That's the idea of virtue. So virtue, helping others, something else. What do you guys think in the chat? Let's take a look, see who we've got in the chat. So hello to Mina. Hello, Sleepwalker. Hello, Julia. Hello, Elena Anisimova, who had her first one-to-one class with me earlier. It was great to meet you and talk to you, Elena. I am looking for new students at the moment, so if you're interested, you can drop me an email. It takes me quite a long time to reply to emails because I don't have a lot of time. So it might take a while to reply to emails. Just be patient. As they say, patience is a virtue. Hello also to Dreamer, good to see you. Julia, again, did I say Julia? Vladimir, good to see you. Sonia Bottorini, hello. Hello, Dan, how are you doing? And hello, Ali Soran. Where are you from, Ali? Where are you from? So we've got some answers here in the chat. Fairness. Fairness is an interesting one. Fairness is kind of related to justice or balance. Hello there to Eternal Netto. Good to see you. Ali is from Somaliland. Very good. Are you joining us from Somaliland today? Righteousness. Julia, what is that? Sounds like a synonym. Appreciation, says Mina. That's an interesting one. And Sleepwalker says compassion. So you guys are naming a lot of virtues here. When you say what is good, you're naming virtues. Let me ask you another question. How do we know what to do to be a good thing? How do we know to do the good thing? So when we are making a decision about what to do, how do we know that it's good? How do we know that it's good? And hello there to Francesca. How are you doing? It's good you could join us today. Hello to Renit and hello to Gersda. Gersda says it's cultural. So what is good is a cultural consideration, subjective, as we learned last class on Wednesday. Something in your head. We rely on moral principles, says Sleepwalker. Yes, but how do we create moral principles, Sleepwalker? That's the question. So, as I said, we're going to look at 3 moral frameworks. And they are, listen, here's your 3 moral frameworks. Virtue ethics, deontology, and utilitarianism. Virtue ethics, deontology, and utilitarianism. So what the hell do those things mean? Because we've got some very scary words there. So let's take a look. They're actually quite, I don't want to say simple ideas, but I think you can understand them if you take a look. So virtue ethics is the idea of focusing on becoming a good person. So with virtue ethics, we decide we have to find what a virtue is and then we try to make that virtue part of us, part of our character. That's the idea of virtue ethics. Then we have deontology. So deontology basically means morality from duty. You have an ethical duty. So we make rules, moral rules, and we use those rules to decide what is good. So if we have a situation or some event and we want to consider what action is good, then we look at the rules. That's with deontology. And then finally, we have the utilitarianism. Can you say that? Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism. I love how white my teeth look on that camera. It's brilliant. They are not that white in real life. Utilitarianism. So with utilitarianism, we try to measure how good a result is for how many people. And when we're deciding what to do, we should do the thing which maximizes good for most people. All right. We need to look at these concepts a little bit closer to really understand what they mean. Let me present you with a situation. Here is a situation. Finding a wallet full of money. So you find a wallet full of money. This is a wallet. By the way, people are using wallets less and less now because people use money less and less. Lots of people use cards and even use their smartphone to pay for things. So we don't really need wallets so much. But all right, take a look at that. You find a wallet full of money. What do you do? Do you do the good thing? Do you do the right thing? And if so, what is the right thing and why? That's really the bigger question there. So let's have a look at the obvious thing here is to return the wallet or find the person who lost the wallet and give it to them. And the question here, or what I want to look at, is why? Why do we return the wallet? Why is that a good thing to do? Hello, Pallavi. Good to see you as always. And hello to Madhwa, who says, don't do bad things to others. That's very interesting, Madhwa. We're going to talk about that later. Don't do bad things to others. Yes, very interesting. So we have return the wallet because you're honest. Return the wallet because it is wrong to take someone else's things. And finally, return the wallet, or don't, because it will cause the most happiness. So these three answers show us the three moral frameworks that we're talking about. The first one is the virtue ethic. So we try to be a virtuous person. We consider honesty is a virtue. And so we return the wallet because we are honest people. Number two is deontology. Remember, deontology means duty ethics. So using duty or obligation to determine your ethics. Often with deontology, we talk about the ethical rules. So we return the wallet because it's wrong to take someone else's things. That's a rule. So we have a rule. It is wrong to take someone else's things. Moral rule. And as a deontologist, we follow our moral rules. Number three, return the wallet, or not, because it will cause the most happiness. So with utilitarianism, we consider, if I keep this wallet, then I'll feel guilty. So that's bad. Another person will feel upset, sad, angry. Maybe it will cause pain. So, but also if I keep the wallet, then I can buy some ice cream. Ice cream's nice. That'll make me happy. So I need to measure the happiness of the different people in this situation and decide what action will cause the most happiness. That is utilitarianism. So let's have a bit of a look at virtue ethics. Here we go. Here we have our picture of the virtuous man. Rather stereotypical picture of the virtuous man. Actually, I asked ChatGPT to draw a virtuous man. I think Pallavi is ill, Julia, that's why. So, virtue ethics. Virtue ethics has a focus on the individual. It's about you and your behavior. So we're focusing on the individual. The idea with virtue ethics is to become a virtuous person. So our objective is to have the behavior of someone who is virtuous. What is virtue? Virtue is a positive trait. It's some behavior that benefits society. Some behavior that we consider to be beneficial to humanity or society. According to virtue ethics, positive traits result in correct decisions and actions. So if you are someone who is virtuous, then you do the right thing. And that's it. We don't care about the rules or measuring happiness, whatever. What we care about is the character of individuals. We want good people. And if we have good people will do good things. That is virtue ethics. Now, the big question of virtue ethics. What do you think is the big question with virtue ethics? What do you think? What's the big... If you're thinking about virtue ethics, this idea, right? People should become virtuous by taking these virtues and putting them in their behavior. What question do you have about that? Let's see what the chat says. Well, the chat doesn't say very much at the minute. I'll give you a minute. Mina says follow our role models. Okay, so we need a virtuous role model, Mina. Who is our virtuous role model? Individual principles are good or bad. That's the idea, Sleepwalker. The idea is to become a person who has good principles. But look, here's the question. What is a good principle? What is a virtue? That's really what we want to know. Because if we want to become a good person, we need to know what are virtues. So, here are some things which we might consider to be virtues. Look at the pictures. We have 6 pictures on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what virtue do these pictures represent? You can type your answers in the chat. What virtues do these pictures represent? And why? Why are they virtues? Why do we consider these things virtues? Zoya says virtues are different for everyone. I think that's true, Zoya. Of course. We can agree or disagree about which things are virtues. There's a famous expression in English which is, patience is a virtue. Nazrin says sacrifice. Which picture is sacrifice, Nazrin? And Julia says 3, justice. Yes, you're right. So 3? That's not 3. I don't think it's 3. Justice is there, but I don't think that's picture 3. That's right, Nazrin. Number 2. So number 2 is sacrifice. Number 1, bravery. You're right. Number 4 is justice. Thank you, Mina and Francesca and Julia. So we have 1, courage or bravery. 2, sacrifice. 3, compassion. 4, justice or fairness. 5, anyone? Any ideas about 5? Charity, help, these are all good things. Empathy, it's an interesting one. Gratitude, I don't have gratitude on there actually, but gratitude is a good one to consider. Yes, Alexander has the closest. So, in fact, 5 is humility. 5 is humility. That's washing someone else's feet. We could also talk about charity, gratitude, etc. But 5 actually represents humility. And 6. It's an expression in English. I've mentioned it in this stream already. Number 6. Someone told you that philosophy is about learning ghosts, Pallavi. I have no idea what they mean by that. Philosophy is about thinking. It's thinking about our world. Philosophy is science before science. So yeah, 6 is patience. Well done. 6 is patience. So just for people who are watching that on screen, I'll put those on the screen now. We have bravery, sacrifice, bravery, sacrifice, compassion, fairness or justice, humility, and patience. And we might also talk about honor, valor, honesty, spirituality, etc., etc. The question is, where do you stop? And of course, we said before that virtues depend on the culture. They depend on the society. So that's the big deal with virtue ethics. We have to find the virtues, and then we try to be people who do those things. So we try to be people who are brave and sacrifice and compassionate and so on. Okay, let's move on. We'll go on now to the next one. Number 2 was deontology. Now, the big question with deontology is, of course, what are the rules? Deontology is a focus on rules. It's about following moral rules because we have a duty to follow moral rules. According to deontology, if we follow moral rules, so if we follow the good rules, then we will have good results. So from our good rules, we will have a good society. Now, the question is, who makes the rules? Or even, how do we make the rules? How do we make the rules? How do I make a rule to decide what's good? Well, famous German philosopher Immanuel Kant said, to make rules, consider how you want everyone to act. So basically, how do you want everyone to act? Is it possible for everyone to follow this rule? And does that sound like a good society? If so, that's a good rule. Okay? So if we have a rule, and the rule is you must tell the truth. That's the rule. You must tell the truth. Then Kant says we should consider what happens if everybody in society follows the rule. If everybody in society follows the rule, what happens? So everyone in society tells the truth. What happens then? Is that good? If the politicians tell the truth, spies tell the truth, teachers, students, husbands and wives tell the truth, does my bum look big in this? What do you think of my new haircut? Is it nice? What happens in society if everyone tells the truth? Is that a good thing? So this is what Kant says we should consider. And Kant called this is a famous philosophical term. If you ever want to study philosophy or whatever, then remember this. It's called the categorical imperative. The categorical imperative by Kant. And that's his rule that to make a moral rule, consider how you want everyone to act. So, let's have a look at some moral rules. All right, chat, here's some rules. Always tell the truth. Keep your promises. Be fair. Respect other people's independence. Do not harm other people. Follow the laws. So, are these good rules? What do you think? Tell me in the chat what you think about each of these. Do you think these are good moral rules? What do you think about a society where everyone follows these rules? What do we think about a society where everyone follows these rules? Would that be a good society? That's really our question. Always tell the truth. Always. Always? I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't always tell the truth. I have lied in my life. Madhua says, it depends on the situation. Let me give you a situation. There is a person who wants to find someone else to kill them. the other person, the victim, is innocent. They are hiding in your cupboard. The person hunting them, the hunter, asks you, where is the person that I want to kill? Now, what is the right action here? Is it correct to tell the truth? These are the things that we have to think about if we want to be a deontologist. Remember, deontologist just means a duty to follow moral rules. That's what it means to say deontology or deontologist. It's about a duty to follow moral rules. Alexander says the right action is not to answer. Is it? Okay, Alexander, but what if they say, if you don't answer, then we will destroy the city and kill everyone? By the way, these situations that I'm giving you, we call them moral dilemmas. It's not always, strictly speaking, a dilemma, because, of course, in Latin, dilemma means these two options. Die is two. But in English, we use moral dilemma to mean just these situations where we have to consider difficult options in a moral situation. So, moral dilemmas can often be a big problem for deontologists because of the rules. It's very difficult to always follow rules. By the way, another word for rules is principles. And that's the word that people often use when they have some sort of moral character. They talk about my principles. Are you a person with principles? Do you stick to your principles? It can be very difficult to stick to principles. We also experiment with this a lot with fictional characters. So consider someone like Superman. Superman is a deontologist. Did you know that? Superman is a deontologist. He has strict moral rules and he tries to follow them in every situation. And even with all his power, because Superman has incredible power, right? A lot of people say he's overpowered. He's invincible. He can fly. He can shoot lasers. He has incredible strength, right? He can even change time. So Superman has all these powers, but he finds it very difficult to follow the moral rules. And that is the purpose of Superman, is to see how does he struggle as this incredible, powerful superhero. He still finds it difficult to follow those rules, those principles. So it's very difficult to be a perfect deontologist. Let's move on to our last moral framework today. So the last moral framework that we're considering today is a utilitarianism. Utilitarianism. So utilitarianism focuses on results. So we change the focus now. With utilitarianism, it's all about results, not principles, not character, results. With utilitarianism, we want to measure good things, measure virtue or goodness or happiness, really, is a good way to talk about it. We want to measure well-being and happiness. And utilitarianism is all about maximizing happiness. So what results in the most good for most people? Utilitarianism is a principle often used in modern politics and in modern decision-making. A lot of people use utilitarianism to make moral decisions in the modern world. So we consider not only what makes people happy or what is better for most people, but we also consider how many people are affected. So if 3 billion people get very unhappy, or one person can get exceedingly happy, then maybe we don't do that because that's not the best option overall. That's the idea of utilitarianism. Now, let me give you an example of some utilitarian ideas, and you tell me what you think of them. The first idea we're going to look at is called UBI. Does anyone know in the chat what is UBI? If you know what it is, type the answer in the chat. UBI. UBI. What is UBI? UBI. Letter U, letter B, letter I. No one? 10 seconds. Okay. UBI is universal basic income. That means that everyone gets some income, some money, whether they work or not. Everyone gets it. So, that is often seen as a utilitarian principle because it's something that's going to make everyone happy. And especially if we take the taxes from just a small number of people, then it will make a small number of people a little unhappier, but it will make lots of people happier. That's the idea of universal basic income. It's a utilitarian idea. What do you guys think about that? Hello, Nitesh. How are you doing? Do you like the idea of universal basic income? Plavi doesn't get it. Let me explain a bit more. Everyone gets $500 per month from the government. If you work, you can get more from your work. However, if you don't work, you still get the $500. So everyone gets $500. It doesn't matter if you work, if you don't work, everyone gets it. That's universal basic income. So, it's a utilitarian idea. What do you guys think? Do you like it? Manila Cadaman says a beautiful idea. Why not? Says Sleepwalker. No one will work, says Zoya. Well, people probably will work, Zoya, because £500 per month is not very good. Is it? £500 a month? You need more, don't you? Yes, all people working receive it as well, Maria. Maria del Carmen. So everyone gets the $500. If they're working, if they're not working, everyone gets it. It's called a progressive tax system. Progressive tax system is something else, Alexander. In the UK, anyway, we use progressive tax system to mean something else. Okay, let's have a look at another example. So, mass government surveillance. Surveillance. Do you want some pronunciation? Surveillance. Surveillance. Mass government surveillance. That means watching people for security reasons. Watching people for security reasons. What do you think about that? Does that seem like a good idea? That's a utilitarian idea. Mass government surveillance. Watching people for security reasons. It's a utilitarian idea. Why is it utilitarian? It's utilitarian because by watching everyone, making everyone a little unhappy, we can save lives, prevent terrorism, and if we can save lives, that's amazing for utilitarianism, because obviously if someone dies, they can't be happy at all. So of course we want people to be alive with utilitarianism. So if we can save lives with mass government surveillance, then obviously that's a good utilitarian principle. What do you guys think? Do you like that idea? Do you want the government to watch everything you do? In our homes, yes, Pallavi. In the toilet as well. It's 45%, Alexander. The highest tax bracket. If you earn over £150,000, then it's 45% tax rate. So we call it progressive because up to about £18,000 you pay no tax, and then it's 20% up to 37,000, and then 40% between 37,000 and 150,000. And it's progressive because when you go over the threshold, so when you earn £150,000 per year, you only pay the new rate over on your earnings over that amount. That's what we call progressive tax rate. So Julia says, I beg to differ. We should have the privacy. Zoya says, I don't like this. Okay, so when I said universal basic income, everyone in the chat was a utilitarian, and now you're not. Suddenly everyone's a deontologist. Suddenly it's about moral rules, right? We need a principle which says respect people's privacy, right? So we're no longer utilitarians. Now we are deontologists. We want our moral principles and we want the government to respect our principles. All right, let's consider another situation, which is mandatory vaccinations. So this is, you don't have a choice. You will be mandatorily vaccinated. So some countries had this policy recently in the pandemic. The UK did not have this, but some countries did. So why is a mandatory vaccination considered utilitarian? And what do you think about it? Do you like it? So I'm going to leave you thinking about this one. I'm also a little bit concerned that this might be too hot for YouTube. So we're going to move on and we're going to start talking about some other issues. So I want you to consider all of the moral frameworks from today. Let's consider all of the ideas from today. We talked about, Okay, we talked about virtue ethics, which is good behavior to become a good character, and that's how you can be a moral person. Then we talked about deontology, which is duty, following rules to do the right thing, having principles to decide what is right. And then we spoke about utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, which is how can we make most people most happy? How do we maximize happiness? All right? So let's consider some scenarios and you tell me, what should we do? What should we do? So first, is it good to give money to a beggar? How do we decide if it's good? Is it good to give money to a beggar? Yes, says Pallavi. End of. Right, I think you needed to say a little bit more than that, folks, but okay, I'm going to put your comments in there. Yes. Can we expand our answers a little bit? I don't think we're going to get an IELTS 9.0 by giving these answers. Sleepwalker says, yes, it's a kind thing if you have some money to be able to share. Very interesting ideas that you guys are coming up with here. Not sure that I entirely agree. But I don't want to give my opinion just yet. Gersda says, I do not give money to beggars. And Renit has an interesting take. So Renit says no, because he won't work and perhaps won't even try. So that's an interesting idea, that if you give someone money for begging, maybe it encourages them to be a professional beggar. Very interesting ideas there from Ashley and Renit. Renit says no because he won't work or even try. And Ashley Chen says, I don't think it's a good idea to do it. It will become a vicious circle. A vicious circle. That's an interesting expression. Vicious in this case refers to a vice being the opposite. Basically, a vice is the opposite of a virtue, and a vicious circle is a circle of doing bad things. One thing that you need to consider on this issue is often people who beg, they're not begging for food because many places, this is in England, many places in England will give you food for free if you are homeless. So this begging is not to prevent starving to death. You are not saving someone's life in the UK by giving them money for food. There are places in every town in the UK where a homeless person can get food. So then, what are you giving the money for? And how does it help them? That's right, Madhua. That can be the case. Beggars do have a lot of mental health problems and physical conditions, and we do need to think carefully about how we can help people in that situation. One of my friends, who is an ambulance worker, that is a paramedic, we say, he said the best thing you can possibly do for a beggar is have a conversation with them. Have a chat to them, ask them how they are, ask them how their day's been. Let them know where the nearest homeless shelter is. They will know already, but you can let them know and point them in the direction, and just chat with them a little bit about the weather, about the day, just whatever, a bit of social contact. He said that's the best thing, in his opinion, as an ambulance worker. It's the best thing you can do for a beggar in the UK. In the UK. I'm not saying that that's the ethical thing to do. I'm just saying that's what my friend, who's an ambulance worker, recommends. All right, let's move on. Next consideration today. Is it good to break a promise for a good reason? What do you think about this? What comments have you guys got about this? Is it good to break a promise for a good reason? Show me some excellent English. Let's get an IELTS 9.0. Here we go, folks. We're getting IELTS 9.0. Well, Zoya, you have to be careful with that as well, because this is the thing. If you give them food, then they won't go to the homeless shelter. And if they don't go to the homeless shelter, then they don't get the correct help. Like, if they go to the homeless shelter, there are social workers there who will help them get their life together, right? So there's an argument to not give food either. Anyway, next situation. Is it good to break a promise for a good reason? By the way, everybody, if you're enjoying this stream, now is a great time to smash that like button and hit subscribe if you haven't. My name is ProfesorRich, and we do learning English streams twice a week currently. Maybe we'll do more in the future. Let's see what happens. We're a channel with just 8,000 subscribers, but we get almost as many live views as some of the very big English learning channels. So I think we're onto a good thing here, folks. Let's do this. We should avoid promising. Is that really your solution? Alexander, 2024. Never make a promise. I like that. Can you clarify, Alexander? Francesca says, yes, if the good reason is better than the reason for the promise. Oh, but is that not a tricky situation, Francesca? Like, what if the promise is like, I don't know. The promise is, Mum and Dad, I promise I will come home before 10 p.m. But then when you're out, you're like, wow, there's an after party going on till 4 a.m. And this after party is once in a lifetime. So surely it's better for me to go to the after party because it's once in a lifetime. Julia says, from my perspective, we shouldn't give our promises easily. And if you do, you'll have to keep your promise unless there's an emergency situation. I think that's a pretty good answer, Julia. We should avoid making promises too easily. If we do, we should only consider breaking our promise in an extreme situation. Remember I talked before about Superman? And obviously one of Superman's principles is not to break promises. And of course, as I said, it's so difficult. It's very, very difficult to stick to those principles, even with Superman's power. Even with Superman's power, it's difficult to stick to those principles. All right, next situation. Is it good to download music illegally? Is it good to download music illegally? Madhur says, breaking promises, then keeping promises, that could be happened wrong. What's this? On a fair reason, it is precious. Breaking promises, then keeping promises, that can be happened wrong. I'm finding that difficult to understand, Madhur. Sorry, I don't quite get it. Sleepwalker says it's very bad to download music. And Mina says, yeah, it's good. If we like a song, we can download it. Whatever the method. I like the distinct difference there. Like, it's obviously bad. Actually, it's good. All right, Pallavi, let's see. Maybe don't promise unless the other person is telling you to promise. Well, that's an interesting idea, Pallavi. But the other person might often tell you to promise. So what do you do when someone says, I want you to promise this? Do you say, I can't? Or what? Guzda says the artist's effort should be respected, so of course this is not good. Okay, Guzda, but let's consider... Well, let me put that first of all. So he said... the artist's effort should be respected, so obviously it's not good. Let's consider a utilitarian perspective, right? By downloading music illegally, I will be very happy. It won't affect the artist so much because they are already millionaires. Therefore, it's good to download music illegally. Now, this is the it's a possible utilitarian answer. What do you think about that? Well, that's it, Zoya. So if we consider virtue ethics, then virtue ethics would say that stealing is wrong, taking intellectual property is stealing, therefore downloading music illegally is wrong. That's the virtue ethic answer. So that's number one. The first moral framework says it's wrong. And number two, deontology probably also says it's wrong, because with deontology we have a moral principle or a rule that stealing is wrong. However, with utilitarianism, we can argue that it's not wrong. With utilitarianism, it depends how happy does it make me, and how happy or how much pain does it cause someone else. All right, folks, let's move on to the next one. So finally, actually, no, we've already talked about that, so we're not going to look at it. Okay, so I promised you a bit of reflection, so let's have a look at a bit of reflection. Reflecting on today. What moral frameworks do we consider today, and which do you like the most? So I'm seeing if you want to be little philosophers today. Which moral framework did you like the most? Excuse me, folks. Thank you, Guzda. So Zoya says, I like virtue ethics because it encourages you to better yourself and thus society. By the way, the ones we talked about were virtue ethics, deontology, and utilitarianism. Utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics. And Zoya said, I like virtue ethics the most because it encourages you to better yourself. Yeah. I think I agree with you. Zoya. I feel the same way. I really like virtue ethics. You know, virtue ethics is the traditional one. Virtue ethics actually comes from the Greeks, the ancient Greek philosophers. It's an old one. So it's quite apparent in the works of Aristotle. And in fact, sometimes Aristotle is considered the kind of founder of virtue ethics. And I really like it because, as you say, it focuses on making yourself a better person. And I think that's a useful perspective for most people. My issue with utilitarianism is I think it can lead to elitist thinking, where if you're someone with a lot of power and a lot of money, you can start to make utilitarian decisions, and you can make those decisions for everyone. And utilitarianism gives you a justification to do that. It's like, well, I can make the world a better place with my power and money by making people do things that will maximize happiness. And I really don't like that. I think it's quite elitist and quite top-down. So personally, this is my personal opinion. I'm not telling you this as a teacher or as an expert. Simply my personal opinion is that virtue ethics is the one I like the most, and very much I agree with Zoya's perspective. Mina says, Rich, I've never learned things like this in my native language, but I prefer virtue ethics because it provides many people's betterment. Well, not necessarily, Mina. It doesn't necessarily provide many people's betterment. Actually, people would argue, I think, that utilitarianism considers most people overall. And Sonia says, I prefer to take inspiration from all of these. Yeah, I think that's a good perspective there. And Sleepwalker says, utilitarianism, it was interesting to discuss the value and the results depending on the situation. Yes. So you can find on the internet a lot of moral dilemmas. And one that you'll see quite a lot is this one. You may have seen this before. It's almost an internet meme, right? And it's the idea that do you do nothing and 5 people die? Or do you pull the lever and 1 person dies? This is a moral dilemma. Moral dilemma. Now, we have an issue with, for example, deontology, where we might have a rule which says, do not kill anyone. And obviously, if you have a rule, do not kill anyone, then you should not pull the lever. Because if you pull the lever, you will kill someone. You will kill someone. And obviously that's not good. And in deontology, we'd say, well, do not kill anyone, so do not pull the lever. However, if you are a utilitarian, then the answer is very simple. Very simple, actually. With a utilitarian, you see your 5 people, you see the 1 person there, pull the lever. Of course, you might have more information. Maybe you know that 5 of these, maybe you know that these 5 people actually are going to be the next Adolf Hitler. And this 1 person is actually a saint, a very, very good person. In which case, utilitarianism tells you not to pull the lever. So anyway, it's interesting, kind of fun to talk about these situations. All right, folks, so here is your homework for next week. So this is for the 20th of January. The homework is to talk about a moral dilemma or question, such as those from the class today, such as, is it wrong to give money to a beggar? Or should you pull the lever in this situation? So you need to explain the situation and say what you think about it and what you would do. I want you to record an audio, send it to me on our chat server, and you can join our chat server now from that link. It is down below the video, and also I'll post that in the live chats. So that's our homework for today. And it's question time. You can download the notes from today, and I will post those notes below this video also. Download the notes from today. And I'm also going to do a little poll here in the chat. Do you like the philosophy topics? Should I do more of these philosophy topics? Or are they a bit too out there? And should we do something a bit more down to earth, like holidays or families or something? Question time, folks. Do you have any questions about English, about their class today, about learning English, or about teaching, or anything like that? Any questions that you have, post your questions now in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. Wow. Seems like you folks do actually like it. We've got a very positive response to that poll. Well, you asked for it. So I guess the next lesson will be epistemology. Do you know what that means? Epistemology is a real tough one, but it's very interesting. What's the difference between debit cards and credit cards, says Asmana. That's a simple one, Asmana. Thank you. What's the difference between debit cards and credit cards? A debit card takes money straight out your bank. A credit card acts like a loan from a credit company, and you pay off the loan later. That's the difference. Dan says, imagine a person named John was caught in 2020 for an act that was not a crime at that time. In 2021, a new law is passed making that act a crime. Is the present participle making modifying a law? What? And oh, I see. A new law is passed making that act a crime. Hang on, I need to take this. Dan, where do you get this stuff from? Honestly, where is that from? Are you studying at school or college? This is something from school or college. Imagine a person named John was caught in 2020 for an act that was not a crime at that time. In 2021, a new law is passed. A new law is passed which makes that act a crime. Which makes that act a crime. Is the present participle making modifying a law? No, it's not. So we can break this down. We can say something like, I sold 3 paintings earning $500. No, wait a minute. All this means is that the passing of the new law made the act which John did in 2020 into a crime. So the passing of the new law in 2021 made the act which John did in 2020 a crime. This made is the same as that making. So does it modify a law? No. It modifies the act. It's make something into something else. Like make the act into a crime, into something else. What do you mean by modifying? Is that clear, what I've put there? I need some clarification from you, Dan. Maybe you need to give me a bit more of an example. Oh, Dan found it on Google. Interesting. My internet seems to have gone horrible just at the end of the class. Pallavi says, teacher, is it good to watch your videos or live streams with live captions? If you wish. Pallavi, if you wish. I would say do what you feel comfortable with. The important thing is, do you understand? Is it comprehensible input? If you don't understand without subtitles, then please put the subtitles on. If you find it more enjoyable with subtitles, then please put the subtitles on. If you don't need subtitles, then have them off. Having subtitles off is a good way to improve listening comprehension. However, you don't need to have subtitles off. You can have subtitles on. It's still beneficial. It's still interesting. And as I said in my class with Manuel Gordillo earlier, me and my wife often watch films with the subtitles on. Because it's easier for her to understand and it's more fun. We don't want if we have the subtitles off, sometimes she doesn't understand and we have to stop the video and I explain it. That's not fun. I want to watch a film. Right? So it depends on your purpose, doesn't it? Is it a present participle adjective? No. No, Dan. No, it's a reduced participle clause. It's a reduced participle clause. I believe that's what you call it. Just trying to check now, but I'm pretty sure that's what we call it. Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, folks. I believe that's a reduced participle clause. Because we're reducing... Wait a moment. Google it. Reduced participle clause. What's the full sentence? In 2021, a new law is passed. In 2021, a new law is passed which makes that act a crime. That's the full sentence. Yeah. In 2021, a new law is passed, comma, which makes that act a crime. We should have a comma in there. Like that. You need a comma because it's a non-defining relative clause. Hello, Saha. How are you doing? It's been a while since I saw you. The subtitles are not enabled for this stream. Some people can get them. I think you can get them on mobile, Saha. Even if I don't enable them, there's a way to get them. The reason why they're not enabled, by the way, is because I'm streaming at a high resolution with high quality, and YouTube doesn't allow live closed captions when you stream in high quality. So that's why they're not enabled. As for debating whether they're useful or not, I don't think that's a debate. I think 100% subtitles are useful. It's just, I think there are situations when it's good to use them, and there are situations when it's better not to use them. That's all I'll say about it. I think that subtitles are great, but also I think sometimes it is good for some people not to use subtitles. That's it. Obviously, this is going to be a debate that goes on forever. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule here. There's not a black and white rule, okay? As with everything. Manuel Gordillo is going to write us an essay, 1,500 words. What percentage of native speakers have a C2 level? Approximately, says Zoya. Well, that is an interesting question, Zoya. Shall we talk about it? Because there's a few things we can say about this. There are a few things that we can say about this. So, let us consider what C2 is supposed to mean. C2 is a level that was invented by the Common European Framework. The Common European Framework was established by the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is an organization which I believe runs parallel to the European Union, but it is distinct from the European Union. It is not the European Union. It is different. So the Council of Europe, for example, Russia was a member of the Council of Europe until 2 years ago. The United Kingdom is still a member of the Council of Europe, for example. So the Council of Europe established the Common European Framework, the CEFR, and the CEFR defines these language levels. They are A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2. And C2 is defined as this situation. Can understand with ease virtually everything heard or read. Can understand with ease virtually everything heard or read. Next, can summarize information from different spoken and written sources, reconstructing arguments and accounts in a coherent presentation. And finally, can express themselves spontaneously, very fluently and precisely, differentiating finer shades of meaning even in the most complex situations. So that is the C2 level. Now, the Common European Framework is not designed to measure language proficiency of native speakers, which means theoretically, I'll say that again, theoretically, all native speakers have a C2 or beyond C2 level of language proficiency. So theoretically, all native speakers are beyond C2. The issue comes where in testing C2, we need to perform certain exam tasks which would be quite difficult for a lot of native speakers because they haven't practiced or they're not very academic. So the question of would all native speakers pass a C2 level, well, that's difficult to say. Probably not. Maybe about 80% could pass the C2 level. But theoretically, all native speakers have a C2 level or even a higher level of proficiency. But realistically, pragmatically, Zoya, in the real world, the reality is many native speakers would find it difficult to pass the C2 level without some training. And I think particularly if you're not very academic, it can be very difficult. Like the reading task and the writing task would be very difficult for some people who left school when they were 14 years old. Do native speakers understand things in the world in every field, says Pachu? No, of course not. Absolutely not. Context is king, Pachu. Context is king. So this point here can understand with ease virtually everything heard or read. It's a little ambiguous because no one understands everything heard or read, right? If you give me a recording of a legal discussion from the back room of the Supreme Court of the United States, there's no way I'm going to understand what they're talking about, right? I wouldn't have a clue because I don't know anything about law. I don't know anything about the law in the United States. I don't know about the special vocabulary that they'd use in that situation. And if you give me an extract of that discussion, I don't know anything about that situation or the discussion. So I have no context. So it'd be very, very difficult to understand that. So, of course, we can't say that people would understand everything. What's the difference between in class versus in the class? In class is just, in a general sense, contrasting in class versus out of class. So So we're contrasting, for example, classwork versus homework in general. Whereas if you say in the class, then you're talking in the specific lesson or classroom. I'm getting a little bit tired now, so I hope that makes sense without clarification. All right, folks, I think we're going to wrap up. So I'll just end this poll. And we've got some homework to check, which I do want to check. So let's have a listen. It's not too much. This was the homework task from last week. And the homework task was to talk about aesthetics. And we're going to start with Julia. So let's hear what Julia has to say about aesthetics.
Let me begin with the topic of aesthetics, the philosophical study of beauty and taste, which is defined by subjective and objective. Generally speaking, subjective means based on a personal perspective or preferences of a person, and it is used to describe something that exists in the mind of a person. In contrast, objective means not influenced by the personal bias, based on the analysis of an object of observation only, and it is used to describe something along the line observation, decision, and report going from bias analysis. It is generally believed that beauty by its very nature brings in every form of pleasure to us, and it is in the eye of the beholder. In the grand tapestry of life, beauty is fully reciprocated with individuals' underlying belief, and so do they.
Let me just check that a second.
Beauty is fully in the eye of the beholder. In the grand tapestry of life, beauty is fully reciprocated with individuals' underlying belief, and so do their taste. Let's say I'm a food critic. Durian is, objectively speaking, the world's smelliest fruit and rich in nutrition, but the wisest one, which is popular in the Southeast Asia region. I bet you will never forgettable once you taste it. In a nutshell, your objective opinion is the one that sets aside your subjective preferences, and instead, it assesses based on fact and reality in our daily life.
Manuel said he can barely hear. I only just saw that. Sorry. My volume's very low. I'm just going to turn it up. If you've turned up your volume, get ready, because this might hurt your ear. So just turn your volume down a little. There you go. I've maximized that now. Sorry about that if it was a bit quiet. So here is some of the things that Julia said that were very nice. Generally speaking, yeah, good way to introduce a general opinion. And I think she had a good definition there of subjective and objective. I don't know if that was from the internet or your own idea, Julia, but it's pretty good. Subjective is something which exists in the mind of a person, and objective means not influenced by personal bias. This idea of subjective and objective, these are going to be important words. This is important vocabulary for us going forward. If we're going to study more about philosophy, then we definitely need to understand subjective and objective. Along the lines of means more or less. Along the lines of, I like that expression. It's a good expression. It means something along the lines of, which means it means more or less, right? So I like that, along the lines of. And the grand tapestry, the grand tapestry of life. Underlying beliefs, pretty good. These are like the base beliefs at the bottom of some ideas. And then Julia spoke about divisive fruit, the durian, the infamous durian, with a strong smell and strong taste. Love it or you hate it. Thank you, Julia. That was absolutely fantastic. And we're moving on to Vladimir.
Role-play games often need to provide multiple roles, if for nothing else to make players' roles distinguishable from each other, and provide rules that do this fairly is not easy. For example, more RPG designers often work with what is known as the Holy Trinity: tank, healer, and damager. In the world of fragmented and dispersed audience, the 360-degree approach multiples the number of distribution outlets and the time period during which content is accessible to audience. The 360-degree illusion is one of the traditions of creating a game world that emerged as the design ideal during the 90s. A complete illusion is aimed for in the game world, with the situational, emotional, and physical realism in character immersion as a what you see is what you get attitude to a physical environment of the game. The characterization followed the genre, with actors carrying opposing points of view, as did the setting, the studio environment, and iconography, with its visual decor, costume, and objects as well. The filmic techniques and conversations of camera work, lighting, use of color, editing carried as the same factual genre message. The Brink effect was created through the combination of alternate reality games and 360-degree illusion aesthetics. The emphasis on pushing your personal boundaries, inspiring participants to take actions they might want to, but never would have done otherwise. It may include the reuse of existing content across additional digital platforms, like supplying linear TV content online or via mobile devices, or the modification of existing output, like re-editing or adding additional layers of content. A third approach is to create additional original content, web content, or any other subsidiary material to support existing liner material.
One moment. Right. All right. Thank you very much, Vladimir. Let's talk about some of the things that he said. So you may have found it a little bit difficult at the start there. So Vladimir started by talking about RPG design, role-playing game design. Now, as we were talking about before, context is important for listening comprehension. So for a lot of people, if you don't know about video games or RPGs, you probably found it very difficult to understand the start of what Vladimir said there, because he was talking about RPG game design. Listen to this.
Role-play games often need to provide multiple roles.
Role-playing games often need to provide multiple roles.
If for nothing else, to make players' roles distinguishable from each other and provide rules that do this fairly is not easy.
Yeah, so role-playing games, all about having a different role in the game. And the way that this happens in online games often is you have something called the Holy Trinity, which is tank, healer, and damager. The tank is someone who absorbs damage from the enemies, like a shield. The healer is someone who heals people, so when they take damage, they get heal. And then you have the damager, who is normally a wizard like Gandalf or a sniper or something, and they need to do damage to the monsters. And this is the holy trinity of role-playing games, which Vladimir started discussing. And he discussed that this was a design ideal. So it's an ideal of designs which emerged during the 90s. And he talked about what you see is what you get. What you see is what you get. This is a design principle. Sometimes people say WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. We then had some pronunciation issues, which I'd like to briefly address. So we had that one. Lightning versus lighting, lighting. So lighting. Very, very different things. Then we had the pronunciation of this. Subsidiary. Subsidiary. Okay, then we've got linear. Subsidiary and linear. Okay, otherwise, fantastic job. Thank you very much for that, Vladimir. Absolutely fascinating. And hopefully some of the people in the chat learned a little bit about RPG design. And that's all we have today, folks. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure you smash this like button right now before we finish. My name has been Professor Rich, and it's been my pleasure to be with you today. Join our community. Join us for our next live stream on Wednesday. Have a lovely, lovely, lovely weekend. And I will see you soon. All right. Bye for now, folks. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. See you later. Ta-ta.